Who is the most underrated actor of all time?
It's Dolph Lundgren.
Correct. Why?
Well, because of his spiky hair and his ice-cold demeanor and his big muscles.
Absolutely.
I must break you. The guilty will be punished.
My name is Sergeant Andrew Scott.
Come on, guys, don't do this. If I don't get breakfast, I get real grumpy. I don't think you like me grumpy.
And you go in pieces, asshole.
Let's kick some ass.
Hello and welcome back to I Must Break, this podcast, the fan podcast looking at the cinematic career of action legend Dolph Lundgren. Today we're going back to school and looking at the 2016 family comedy Kindergarten Cop 2. In this remake of the 1990 Arnold Schwarzenegger classic, Dolph stars as Zack Reed, a tough FBI agent who must go undercover as a kindergarten teacher in order to find a flash drive containing the evidence needed to put away an Albanian gangster. Yet his class of 6-year-olds and their needy and liberal ways give Reed much more than he bargained for.
At Seattle's most prestigious elementary school, children are given the guidance they need.
Deep breath in, deep breath out.
To become good citizens of the world. Fortunately, this academy just hired the perfect teacher. Dolph Lundgren is Kindergarten Cop 2.
Does Machino's mean Twix bar?
He's an undercover FBI agent looking for stolen data.
How close are you to making a breakthrough?
They're definitely warming up to me.
And one of these kids holds the key.
They are totally useless for reliable information.
To uncover the truth, he'll have to use every trick in the book.
They can smell fear.
They're 6.
I have 2 mommies, and they tell me I shouldn't trust boys.
Next!
From Universal Pictures.
They're children. I can handle this.
Dude, you're dreaming.
Hey, settle down! Put that away!
Comes an all-new movie.
Things can spiral out of control very quickly.
They're little monsters.
Mr. Reed gave us chocolate.
She's funny.
Starring Dolph Lundgren.
All right, everybody, let's sit down. Indian style.
Whoa, whoa, whoa.
And Bill Bellamy.
You don't say Indian style.
See what I gotta deal with?
Is that the other kindergarten teacher?
She is fine. The school isn't what I expected.
Tell me about it.
Kindergarten Cop 2.
That's how Zack Reed, kindergarten teacher, rolls.
I'm your host, Sean, and returning to the show to help me discuss this one is my buddy and major cinephile, Nathan Burt. Nathan, it's been a while, but I know you kept calling me every day. You know, when are we going to tackle Kindergarten Cop 2? Please. I really want to discuss this one, so thank you.
Breaking down your door is more is more like what I would call it. But yes, I'm happy to be back, and thank you for having me to discuss yet another Dolph movie where he is in education of some sort.
It was inevitable. I mean, I said it the last time when we discussed detention. You and I have experience in the worlds of education, we'll say. So I think it was pretty much a given that you were going to be coming back for this one. So thank you.
You bet. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
So I guess, before we get going, I mean, you mentioned something earlier I wanted to ask you about, because there's a lot of problems with this film, but I mean, we'll just get to it real quick. Is it fair to say you did enjoy this one a little bit more than Detention? Is that right?
Yes. That being said, the bar wasn't very high. So I would say that, yes, overall, this was a more enjoyable experience for me than Detention was.
Well, this isn't, I mean, as I was watching this, obviously this is not really a sequel to the original, but it's essentially a remake that, let's be honest, is arriving 26 years after the first one. I wanted to, before we get into this one, I wanted to quickly talk about the original film, because I don't know about you, but as I was watching this film, it made me really almost want to go back and watch the original. And I mean, look, I know that, for me personally, the original Kindergarten Cop, I mean, man, that was on cable constantly when I was a kid throughout the 90s. But I'll admit it's not my favorite Arnold Schwarzenegger film, but there's so much about that film that really make it, a solid vehicle. And I have a few points that I wanted to, that I kind of came to, but I'll just go to you real quick. You're a big fan of the original Kindergarten Cop, right?
I unabashedly adore the original Kindergarten Cop. I have nothing but wonderful memories of seeing it when I was a kid, when it first came out. I saw it a couple of times in the movie theater. I remember opening weekend seeing it. I remember seeing it a couple weeks later. I also remember renting it the first weekend that it was out on video. It's a movie that I've come back to recently, mainly because I've done a lot of traveling in the Pacific Northwest, and I've spent a lot of time in Astoria recently. And it's a movie that I've come back to quite a bit, and it's one of those movies where I don't feel like I can kind of approach it properly from a critical standpoint. Not that I'm a critic by any means, but I can't really approach it from a fair standpoint as a critic, because it's so enmeshed and kind of tied to my nostalgia of that time. And seeing it now, it's really kind of hard for me to detach the really fond memories I have of that. So is it a great film? Objectively, I can't really say that. But do I have wonderful, great memories of it? Yes. Is it a solid film? Yes. I think it's a really solid film. I think it's a really fun concept. And it's great to see Schwarzenegger at the time, especially playing off of that kind of badass image that he had. And, a sequel, Kindergarten Cop 2, just begs the question, what's the point?
Well, I mean, yeah, exactly. I mean, everything you said is correct. As I was watching this sequel, remake, whatever you want to call it, like I said, it made me go back and think about the original and what made the original such a solid film. And so I kind of charted these down. I wrote these down, and I don't know if you would agree with this, but in my opinion, I think there are 4 things about the original that not only make it a solid film, but really help it hold up, in my opinion. And I don't know where you stand on any of these, but one of them you already talked about was Arnold Schwarzenegger. So if you go back, if you can think about this, about this era, Schwarzenegger obviously had the film Twins before this one, but this film really exposed audiences to another side of Arnold Schwarzenegger. And what's almost fascinating about it, I mean, obviously you don't realize it at the time, but as you look back upon it, you realize Arnold, man, he was making some really calculated decisions throughout his career that I think helped him become the biggest movie star in the world. So if you look at Kindergarten Cop, this film was that film was sandwiched in between Total Recall and Terminator 2, which are 2 extremely violent action movies. And so I think that was, like I said, when I said it was a calculated decision on his behalf, I think he was, of the mindset of, yes, I am the king of action cinema. Okay. But you have Kindergarten Cop that's coming in. Well, this allows him to show audiences that he could successfully do comedy as well. And obviously, he has these 2 action films on each side of this. So he's still kind of appealing to those masses as well. But if you look at the original, man, I think it really exposed him and showed audiences that not only was he a great big teddy bear, but that he could be funny if given the right material.
Are this all your lunches? You mean you eat other people's lunches? Stop it! Now we're going to do something extremely fun. We're going to play a wonderful game called Who is My Daddy and What Does He Do? Yes?
Is your daddy a fireman? He's probably big. Is he a wrestler? Is he a basketball coach?
No.
What's the matter?
I have a headache.
It might be a tumor.
It's not a tumor. It's not a tumor at all.
Well, and I think that's definitely correct. And he's certainly, has a humorous kind of streak through a lot of his movies, even his kind of pure action movies, stuff like Commando, stuff like Eraser, which would come out after this, obviously. But they have these like really kind of campy, throwaway, one-liners that are throughout. Total Recall has it a lot as well too, and these kind of impossible, ridiculous, over-the-top action sequences. Like I think of that scene in Commando where he is swinging across the mall on this. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but
yes.
he's like attached to streamers or something like that, and he's swinging himself across the mall in order to get to the other side instead of just running around. And so he's always had this vein of kind of silliness running through his movies. This was definitely more of a targeted. There were a couple of reasons for this, right? There's this, targeting a different kind of demographic of people, but also wasn't Kindergarten Cop really kind of tied into some of the presidential fitness stuff that he wanted to enact at the federal level with this as well? So there were reasons to kind of go with that as well too. But when you think about Kindergarten Cop and you think about the narrative of that movie, it's got these like fun scenes and there's all these little kids doing silly things and like, we cut to these reaction shots of Schwarzenegger, reacting to these things that kids are doing and he doesn't know how to respond to it. And, but there's some really heavy adult material in that movie. I mean, there's this whole drug overdose story that happens with these people. The whole reason he's there is to catch this drug dealer, and then it all leads up to this very, very violent.
Oh yeah,
and this very violent climax in the bathroom of this elementary school, and you really kind of start to think like, yeah, and the PG-13 rating is definitely deserved, but like, really, where is, like, he really kind of straddles these two audiences, the one that he's trying to kind of convert and the one that he's bringing in from his other pictures.
Most definitely. I mean, you just said it. Yeah, it is, especially near the end. I mean, it gets really violent, but in a weird way, it balances itself so well. And I think a lot of that is to my second point, my second reason I think why the film works is Ivan Reitman. I mean, and I think that was something that Arnold always did, is he always wanted. I think Arnold was a guy, he realized, look, I may be a little rough around the edges in terms of the acting, but if I align myself with really solid, accomplished directors, then I'm going to put forth good material. And so, yeah, Ivan Reitman, someone who's experienced in comedy, had proven by that point, yeah, that he could successfully direct comedy well. And the third thing that I really wanted to touch upon is the score. I don't know if you are a fan of Randy Edelman's score in the first film, but it is such a signature character, I would say, part of the first movie.
I sure am. I actually have it. I downloaded it from iTunes. several years ago. I listened to it quite a bit, especially when I'm at work. Randy Edelman has this like really fascinating string of really great kind of organically comic scores, all from that time period. Like this included, and then Troop Beverly Hills the year before, and then 2 years after that with Drop Dead Fred. And it's actually one of my big kind of laments is that more of his stuff isn't available from that time period for people to listen to. It's a great score. It captures again that the difference are the two different worlds that Schwarzenegger seems to be kind of straddling within the work that he's doing in that movie. So it captures kind of like the light, goofy, fun piece of the kindergarten classroom scenes and the scenes where he's, training them, et cetera, et cetera. And then with the kind of like more of the like Brad, I'm going to ruin his last name, but Brad Fiedel, who did the scores for like Terminator and Terminator 2 and stuff like that. It kind of like, then he's able to kind of balance both of those two different things. So again, it was this, we kind of keep coming back to this idea that he's got these two different kind of sets of audiences that he's bringing together in this one kind of holiday package. Because the movie came out back in, I want to say like late December of 1990.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, the Randy Edelman stuff is great.
And the fourth thing I think that makes the film stand up, even to this day, I will say right now, is the villain. I mean, and you already touched upon it, but look, villains are extremely important to the conflict of the film. And Richard Tyson as Crisp, as the character of Crisp, is excellent. It makes me wonder why we never really got to see much more of Richard Tyson over the years. But in this one, yeah, he plays an evil drug dealer. And can we just take a minute, please, to appreciate the fun and nuanced character touches that are there with Crisp that I just love, okay? For one, he kills mercilessly. He's very, very well dressed. There's even one scene where he's getting a manicure. But the absolute best characteristic that he is given is the fact that his right-hand accomplice is his own mother. I mean, and it sounds, just mentioning it, it sounds silly, me talking about that, okay, that the villain of this movie is essentially a mama's boy. But the way in which it is played is so good. Carol Baker plays Crisp's mother. She's absolutely deliciously evil as well. Even Crisp is afraid of her. But that is one little character nuance that I think was just played brilliantly in the first one.
I don't like what you've done. I really don't like it. It feels terrible and it looks dreadful.
I'm trying my best.
Well, maybe your best isn't good enough.
I'm back.
Oh, great. Well, that was fast.
It was easy. I have some great, exciting, wonderful news, Mother.
Oh, you always exaggerate, Cullen. Everything is always great, terrific. So what's so great?
I just found out where they're hiding.
Are you serious? You really know where he is?
Manicure, Mr. Crisp?
How could I say no to you?
Tell me. What's happened?
Just let me handle this myself, Mother. I know what I'm doing. Everything is under control.
I'm a police officer. Crisp, you're under arrest. Put your hands on your head, slowly. And get up.
Kimball, not again.
Your hands.
They're up. When are you going to leave me alone?
Drop the gun! Yeah, that's right. Drop the gun! Hey, I'm a police officer. This is an arrest.
This man is crazy. Look at him. He wants to kill me. You're just going to stand there?
Freeze!
Oh, jeez.
I'm a cop, you idiot. I'm Detective John Kimball. This man is under arrest.
Yeah, we'll see about that. I'm checking it out.
You can't just walk in here and put a gun in my face. I'm trying to get a manicure. I have witnesses.
I have a witness, too. It's murder one this time. Now you're mine.
Yeah, I think it's great. It's kind of classic, almost like Ma Barker type relationship that's going on there with her kind of involving her own son into this kind of life of criminality and stuff. And This is his second movie after this great performance that he had in 3 O'Clock High. I don't know if it's some movie you ever saw, but
yes.
He's great in this movie as this kind of like high school bully that's going to beat up, or that's the whole movie is kind of revolving around when he is going to beat up Casey Seismako. I think I just completely ruined his name as well too, but it's great to kind of see him to see him play off of that. I think he's really good in that role. And I mean, Carol Baker, for God's sakes, she's a classic Hollywood actress, and in several films over several decades, and then to all of a sudden see her show up in this film in this type of role is a fabulous touch.
Well, okay, so we talked about all of the things that made the first Kindergarten Cop movie work. Okay, the score, the direction, and the villain. Sadly, none of these nuances are present in this sequel. We do not get a memorable score. We do get a director who's experienced in the world of direct-to-video cinema, but the villain, there's really nothing there with the villain. The villain is just simply a big, brutish Albanian gangster who's not intimidating in the least. I mean, I think it's fair to say, I don't know if you picked up on this, but I think everything about the first movie that made the first movie stand up is pretty much absent from the sequel, remake, whatever you want to call it.
Well, what's interesting about this sequel is that it's essentially just the first movie updated a little bit for 2016 or whenever it came out. And so you would think, wow, this, as with most sequels, like, here's this formula. It worked really well. I think Kindergarten Cop was, even though it had Schwarzenegger in it and it had, other big names in it, Penelope Ann Miller at the time was no slouch by any means. And, Ivan Reitman directing, he was, Ivan, Ghostbusters Reitman, right? Like, I mean, I think it was still kind of almost like a sleeper kind of hit, though, almost, in the fact that it's these kind of elements that, again, these kind of odd elements that are all coming together in one screenplay. And it just worked. It clicked with audiences. And what's strange about the new film is that since they repeat it, you would think, oh, it's been 25 plus years since the last one. It'll be kind of nice to have a new, to just kind of get this familiar story and to kind of get cozy with it. And it just kind of, it just doesn't work. It just kind of lays there. Yeah. And it just kind of just feels disjointed and just sits there and doesn't do much. And, if anything, as I'm sure you've kind of already said, all it really does is just make you appreciate how different and how good the original one was.
Yeah, how tightly constructed the original was. Yeah, well, I mean, if we look at Dolph, okay, if we look at our man of the hour, I mean, if you look at Dolph in this film, I think it's fair to say, I think he's doing what he can with the material. I mean, I don't know how you felt or not, but I think he's likable on screen. It's evident that, that he is trying. This is, I mean, even to this day, for that matter, this is a very different role for him compared to any of his previous films. I mean, here, like Schwarzenegger before him, Dolph is showing audiences a new warm side to, his tough exterior, which is pretty refreshing. So I think it's pretty evident why he signed on and agreed to this role. I don't know if you wondered this, but I almost kind of wonder, okay, if this was not tied to the Kindergarten Cop name and was its own original story, if possibly the film might have had more success and wouldn't come off as dopey as I think it ends up being.
Well, so here's the thing. Dolph Lundgren is always interesting on camera. He's got this kind of formidable physique about him. He's tall. He's attractive. He is someone who people, I think, would find interesting, right? I mean, certainly you have a podcast dedicated to him. He certainly has a following to him. I think the idea of whether or not if it didn't have the kindergarten cop name to it, I think that the film would suffer all the more just because people would be saying, "Isn't this just kindergarten cop?"
Right.
Does that make sense? I think they would be saying like, "Oh, this movie is about a guy who's going undercover at an elementary school in order to find a certain specific thing." Like, people would say, "Oh, yeah, no, this is just kindergarten cop."
Well, something that I really noticed about it, watching this film. So we should probably say, okay, Dolph plays the character of Zack Reed. He's this single FBI agent who's also very proud of his bachelor status and even brags to his partner about how he enjoys, having the occasional hookup. We're going to get to some of those characteristics here in a minute. But something I really, really noticed about this film, again, which makes you appreciate the original all the more, is I think with this film, for me, this was the major difference between Dolph and Arnold. Okay, so if you look at the original film, okay, the original Kindergarten Cop film, for the first 15 to 20 minutes, and again, I hate to keep going back to this, but how tightly constructed the first movie is. But if you look at the original, for the first 15 to 20 minutes of that film, Arnold is essentially playing the Terminator. Okay, and for those first 15 minutes, he has the trench coat, the sunglasses, the shotgun. And then what we get to see in the film is we get to see his character go through this arc where he not only learns to become a teacher, but also his humanity is kind of brought to the surface. And it's really, I'll say, even to this day, I think it's really, really touching. Here, Dolph's character never goes through an arc. I mean, he's a womanizer at the beginning, and he remains one by the end by landing this young, hot kindergarten teacher, which I imagine we'll be getting to. And we never even really, get to see him grow as a teacher either. I mean, I don't know about you, but watching the first film, you get to really see the trials and the tribulations of being a kindergarten teacher. And you get to see him, even though the film is only 100 minutes, you get to really see Arnold grow and become that educator that I think he didn't want to be, but that he became. In this film, we never really get to see Dolph become a teacher. We get to change in any way.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that happens in the first movie where a lot of that comedy comes from the fact that we're playing off of these kind of images that we have and that we own of Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? And so just, the concept alone is enough to kind of make you giggle a little bit, right? Like, oh, this like big, Mr. Universe is now going to be in charge of 25-year-olds.
Oh, the hilarity.
Yeah, I mean, like, I can't wait to see what happens here. And if the original film has a downfall, and I'm sure it probably has more if I can think of it, is that like it probably could have mined some of that a little bit more. Like what other like crazy situations could we really have found him in? As he thinks, he's walking into this situation where he's like, hey, I deal with criminals all day long. These are 5-year-olds. It's fine. I can handle them. And like you get a little bit of that at the beginning. But then, he finally figures out how to kind of create this routine for these kids and turn them into police officers or mini police officers in his classroom with them. And with this film, there's really just kind of like this, or with the second film, it's really just kind of like this. The only thing, if memory serves, it's been about a month or so since I watched it, a little bit over that. If memory serves, like really
if you want to borrow it again, I can hook you up. You want to borrow it again?
Yeah, I mean, Christmas break is coming up. I would love to spend another 95 minutes with it. But he's just kind of like, okay, I'm gonna the Zack Reed character is just like, okay, I'm gonna come into this school, I'm gonna look for this thumb drive, and I'm gonna leave. And he, all he really is like paying attention to in the film is these, like the fact that the kids can't heat up their lunch in certain types of plastic in the microwave, or like he's really just responding to these kind of like bizarre anti-liberal like things that the screenplay throws in, which I don't really understand and doesn't really make sense to me. But then like he just kind of sits there and is like befuddled by it, but then nothing comes of it. Nothing happens. It's there just to what? I mean, like, I certainly don't mind people making fun of liberals or Democrats. I mean, it doesn't bother me, but like, what's the point of it? And so he just kind of like, whereas like Schwarzenegger like really his character was really forced to like interact with this environment and was really forced to kind of like continue being this cop and continue looking for the kid whose dad was Chris. Here he's just kind of like, I'm just looking for this thumb drive, and there's no real like juice to the work that he's doing with these kids. Like he's not doing anything with these kids. He essentially could have been placed in an old folks home, and it would have been the same. It would have been the same setup.
Well, if we look at, there's a couple other characteristics about the character that, about the character of Zack Reed that we can talk about. For one, I mean, they don't give us much other than the fact that, okay, he lives in a trailer. Okay, the film is set in Seattle, right? So Zack lives in a trailer that sits on the edge of the coast. All of his weights and workout equipment are stationed outside. So we get a scene early on during the title sequence where we see his daily workout routine, which, consists of weights and martial arts training. Here, I think the director, who's Don Michael Paul, we haven't said the director of this film, but the film was directed by Don Michael Paul. Here, I think the director pretty much just said, hey, Dolph, do what you typically do on a Tuesday, I guess. And then it's also established that, he's partnered with comedian Bill Bellamy, thus giving us another comedic foil for Dolph. Also kind of aligning with the original film where Dolph was where Arnold was partnered with the great Pamela Reed, who kind of, provided some levity here and there. That's what they're giving us here. They're giving him the wacky, goofy partner, right?
Yeah. And Bill Bellamy is, for my money, was the best part of this film. I can't say that I've actually followed his career by all that much, but I certainly remember him in the 90s, and I liked what I saw in the 90s of his. And so this was for me watching this, I was like, oh, that's Bill Bellamy. This is wonderful. I haven't seen him in a long time, even though I'm sure he's been in stuff. I just haven't seen it. And so for me, he was more interesting than the Dolph Lundgren character, but they didn't really give him anything to do.
They established that he has 5 kids, only we never get to see those. You know what I mean? It's like, why do they establish he has like 5 kids? But
well, and he's just kind of like, hey, this scene requires his partner to be there, so he's there, and like he doesn't do much of anything, and it's certainly not his fault. It's the way that the character's written, but. I would have way rather have spent more time with him than, the weird, that weird Hal character who played the technology teacher or librarian or whatever he was. And that was super awkward. I didn't care at all about the kindergarten teacher that he was supposedly having, he was getting into a relationship with. Is that Miss Sinclair? Was that her name? I mean, truly, the Bill Bellamy character was the only one. I mean, the whole villain story is it's all just like a throwaway plot, and it's resolved at the end only because it has to be, and that's pretty much it.
Well, yeah, I mean, so let's just get to that. Okay, so. Reed and Sanders, so this is Dolph and Bill Bellamy's character, they're on the trail of this Albanian gangster named Zogu, okay? And so the MacGuffin of the film, if you will, they need a flash drive that contains the locations and the whereabouts of everyone involved in the FBI's witness protection program. So they established that a witness in hiding who can testify against Zogu is at risk of being killed if Zogu and his goons find this person. And so this flash drive was in the possession of a local kindergarten teacher. This person was killed by the Albanians, but not before he gave up the location of its whereabouts. So Dolph's Reed character does get the drop on it, and he gets the wise idea to go undercover in this school and take the place of the deceased kindergarten teacher. Now, I have so many things. I want to get your opinion on this, but okay, obviously the flash drive, it's the MacGuffin, it's the plot device to get Dolph into the kindergarten class so that we can have all this, comedy ensue. I get that. Okay. I honestly feel what's on the flash drive really isn't even necessary. I mean, I don't know if you picked up on this, but the impetus in establishing why it was ever even in the hands of the kindergarten teacher is extremely hazy and glossed over. And the other crime about this that I just I was amazed that they didn't even bother with is, okay, the kindergarten teacher, Mr. Flaherty, is never even shown. I mean, supposedly he's the brother of a whistleblower who's locked up in prison, but they never bother showing us any of these characters.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I think Miss Hagley in the first picture was never shown either, right? She was
right. Yeah.
They replaced her because the cops came to the principal and said that they had to. But with this guy, I think that was something that I had noticed before, was that there's no reason for this to have taken place in a kindergarten classroom. They don't make it so that there's a reason for there to have been the fact that he needs to go to this kindergarten classroom in order to find this flash drive or this thumb drive or whatever it is that he's looking for. There's very weak connections as to why the teacher would be involved in this in the first place, like you said.
Yeah,
and
it doesn't make any sense.
The fact that the thumb drive is just hiding somewhere in the school to begin with, or in the classroom, what I don't understand is why. I mean, I get it. I know, because if they did this, then there'd be no movie. But why he didn't just spend time after the kids left for the day tearing the classroom apart looking for the thumb drive? It just, most of it didn't make much sense.
Well, I guess, going back to detention, I mean, that was our big, if you remember, okay, that was our big complaint with detention, where the explanation for why the villains were invading a high school was never even really fleshed out. So I guess, considering the second time Dolph plays a teacher, I really shouldn't be expecting too much in terms of narrative impetus, right?
And I'm certainly not expecting anything in terms of this is what education is actually like by any means. So.
Well, that's an excellent segue. Yeah, let's just get there, because, I mean, and you mentioned this to me when you watched the film initially. It's weird. It's almost like the screenplay has some kind of agendas, if you will. I don't know what's going on, but there's some real digs that the film is making. I wouldn't say at the current state of education, but I would say at certain aspects of education in the midst of political correctness. Okay. So we get scenes where the kids are eating tofu and we have to be mindful of peanut allergies. One kid is even mentioning the importance of eating gluten-free. And then there's even the classroom has a therapy pig. I mean, it's very clear that that's what this screenplay is doing, is that it's poking fun at the current state of certain people in the world of education, I would say.
Yeah, and again, I think that there is, you and I both have been teachers or worked in education for well over a decade, and I think that there is a lot of humor and satire to mine from some of the more ridiculous things that you and I have seen, not only with colleagues, but parents and students, administration, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot there. There's a lot to satirize just in general in the daily life of an educator. And what I guess I didn't understand about this was that really it was making the kids the brunt of the jokes. And that to me didn't make any sense. Like in the first movie, these kids are the joke is his reaction to what the kids are doing, not necessarily the kids themselves. And in this movie, all it is him essentially making fun of certain things that are going on, like peanut allergies. Why? I don't understand why that's funny. There has to be a reason that that's funny, right? There has to be a reason that, like, making fun of a child because they have a peanut allergy and needing to make sure that they are safe and they are protected is funny. And I just didn't get that from the screenplay. I think the screenplay, though, is kind of like I've alluded to before, is the screenplay has bigger designs than this. The screenplay has not necessarily designed so much to make fun of the state of current education, which it does, but to more kind of broadly just kind of like poke fun at liberalism in general, which again is fine. Absolutely do that. There's no problem with that. But what's the point of it? Like, have there be a point to it? Because like Schwarzenegger wasn't doing that in the first movie. He wasn't making fun of political ideology. He wasn't, trying to put half of the country down. He wasn't trying to like have these children be mouthpieces for, some weird vendetta that he had against political ideologies. But this one does, and it's all just kind of lays there and is hollow and is flat, and it doesn't make any sense.
Well, the part that really made me roll my eyes, okay, I mean, because again, when you get back to the core concept of this thing, it's pretty much, okay, big tough guy in the thrown in the middle of 30 crazy kids. Okay, I get that. But the part that really just, I was like, what is going on here, is where, okay, Dolph, okay, we haven't talked about this, but he's this swinging tough bachelor who's just, he has this magnetism with all ladies. We haven't really talked about that, but all the women just swoon for him every time he's in their presence. But he, in a bizarre scene, he provides the little kids with chocolate chunk cookies because apparently, Nathan, I guess he is completely unaware of the effect that sugar has on kids.
I guess.
I mean,
all right, everybody, snack time. I brought a special treat for you guys because today is my first day. And Cowboy, look, no peanuts. I checked. Who wants some chocolate chunk cookies?
Do they have 78% cacao?
No, this is real chocolate. Milk chocolate.
With processed white sugar?
Who cares? It's chocolate. Okay, guys, you're in for an awesome surprise. Come on. Wow, good to eat some real chocolate once in a while, huh?
Come on. Like, I mean, he's in the FBI and he does not know that giving 6-year-olds chocolate chip cookies is going to make them go crazy. And it seems like all that scene was there for is it was just leading to the moment where he could mirror the original and scream, "Shut up." Kind of like Arnold did in the first one. Is that the purpose of giving the kids chocolate cookies? And I guess being surprised that they are out of their minds at the idea of sugar, I guess.
Sure. And I mean, that's the whole point of this kind of bizarre state of, television show revamps that we're in, and this kind of like nostalgia driven pop culture era that we're in right now. One of the scenes that everyone remembers from Kindergarten Cop is it's not a tumor scene, and boys have a penis, girls have a vagina scene, and then the scene where he yells "shut up" at everyone, right? And gets them to try to get them to stop being crazy. And so really it's just these scenes are kind of thrown in for two reasons. One, for lack of better ideas, and two, because the screenwriters want to capitalize on people's, fondness and nostalgia for whatever it is that they're revamping or they're redoing. And you're really not getting anything. Again, it's not really doing anything. This movie is like eating cotton candy, right? It's not filling. It's not really all that tasty. Cotton candy's disgusting. And it's just all a bunch of, fluff and hot air. And it's just kind of I don't know, whatever.
Well, Dolph was only in the school. I don't know if you picked up on this or not, but he's only in the school for 5 days because there are clear title cards in the film letting you know how long he's been there. And I'm going to go back to something I said earlier. With the Arnold original, okay, the narrative establishes more time to where ostensibly, I don't know if you picked up on this, but I felt like the first one, it establishes it to where, okay, ostensibly, I believe that Arnold, by a certain point in the film, has ingratiated himself into the school for at least a couple months. But in this one, again, because it is such a carbon copy of the original of a lower quality, I guess Dolph, not only does he make connections with all these students and become a master teacher and start a relationship with one of the other teachers, but he does all this over the course of not even a full week, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I mean, there's that great scene in the original where it's him and Linda Hunt are in the principal's office, and she's leading him down this one path with this speech where she's telling him, like, you don't know what you're doing, your conventions or your work is unconventional, nothing seems to be working. But then she said, she kind of flips it and she says, but the kids seem to be responding. They seem to love you.
I checked you out. There is no record of you ever having taught at any public school in California or anywhere else. Mr. Kimball, you have no teaching experience whatsoever, do you?
Someone finally noticed.
I thought the introduction of a ferret was a horrible idea, but the children seemed to like it. I thought the use of your police whistle was outrageous, but...
It's all I could think of.
Please allow me to finish.
Sorry.
But it worked. I have no idea what kind of police officer you are, but you're a very good teacher.
Thank you.
You really see, like, that film, again, that film isn't Shakespeare by any means. That film is not Kurosawa. It's not, it's not Bergman. It's not something that is going to kind of like shake the global scale and is going to make people rethink their lives and or anything. But there is that film takes care to kind of not only map his progression and his arc as a character, but it also kind of shows the arc of other people within his kind of atmosphere, right? So we see the arc of the principal and her secretary in that movie. We see how the Penelope Ann Miller character kind of changes over time. We get to learn more about the Pamela Reed character as she's going on. She starts out with this, I'm your partner, and then she gets the bout of food poisoning, and that's what makes it so that he has to take over. And then you find out later in the movie that she's engaged to be married to this guy, and this guy is kind of like this goofy doofus, and but she really loves him, and like you find out these different things, and there's this great like small lines of dialogue that even Crisp has, where, he's talking to his mom and he says, you shoved all this crap down my throat for years and there was nothing wrong with me. And she says, that's why there was nothing wrong with you.
Mother, got this great surprise for Junior.
That'll be $57.90.
$57.90. Children's aspirin, children's decongestant, antihistamine, a thermometer.
There's a lot of flu going around this time of year, isn't that so?
It is the season.
The boy's not sick.
Doesn't hurt to take precautions.
Mother, you are going to make him sick. You stuffed all this crap down my throat for years, and there was nothing wrong with me.
That's why there was nothing wrong with you.
How can you argue with that?
You get these kind of like great little, just one or two line pieces of dialogue that kind of flesh these people out and give them these kind of like narrative arcs throughout. And with this, you just don't have that. Again, he comes in, he deals with the kids, he looks for the thing, and then he leaves. And that's it. And again, if, like we keep saying, it just kind of helps you really appreciate how much better the first one is.
Well, okay, I mean, okay, so once Reed is in the school and covering for the kindergarten class, we meet some of the other staff members of the school. Apparently, this pricey private schools, they established that this is a private school that is very, very pricey for parents to send their kids. But apparently the school only has 3 employees, or maybe better yet, the budget can only afford for 3 others. But we only have 3 employees. We have the principal, we have Olivia, the kindergarten teacher, and Hal, the goofy computer science teacher. You mentioned Hal, so I wanted to go to him real quick because, all right, so he's this computer science teacher. He's the other attempt at comedy, I guess, in this film. But what's so sad about this is the comedy all boils down to the fact that we're supposed to laugh at him because he is overweight and he is a nerd. And that is it. Like we're supposed to laugh at the fact that this is a goofy fat guy who's a geek, basically.
And how tired is that? How boring is that? I mean, Hal, the Michael Northey who plays him, is clearly an interesting actor. Like I don't think I've ever seen him in anything else other than this, but he does well at playing this like super awkward, uncomfortable, nerdy guy, to the point where you do really feel bad for him. But like that's kind of like when you think about this film, it's really kind of in line with this mean streak of what the film thinks is funny. Like, we think it's funny to make fun of these kids who have peanut allergies. We think it's funny to make fun of, parents who are wanting their children to be a little bit safer about different environmental issues. We think it's funny to laugh at kids whose parents have raised them vegetarian. We think it's funny to laugh at somebody because they're overweight and a little unattractive. And it's not funny. It's sad. And it kind of speaks, for me, it speaks to the, David Steinberg is the guy who wrote this screenplay. Murray Salem, they credit him as a screenplay writer as well, too, but that's impossible since he died in 1998. But he created the original screenplay for the first movie, so maybe that's why they're giving him some credit for this. And then Herschel Weingrod is the other screenplay writer, and to me, it speaks to this great a great sadness about them as writers, that they would think that this is something that is. These are things that are funny and things that we make fun of in society.
Well, the other element about this, I think, that is a little disturbing is, look, let's just get to it, okay? Dolph's love interest in this film is the character of Olivia. Okay, so she's the other kindergarten teacher. This is once again following the blueprint of the original, where Dolph, the big tough guy who comes in, is going to fall in love with one of the other teachers who is there. The problem with this is that let's just face it, she's half his age. I mean, there is a 30-year age difference between them. And they never even really acknowledge this. It never stands out in any kind of way. Or, excuse me, it stands out to us, the viewers, but to them, it's never even referenced. And so I'm watching it, and it's just kind of icky watching them flirt and become romantically involved. I mean, there's a really kind of disturbing and wrong trend in a lot of these films, especially these direct-to-video action movies, where apparently they think that audiences do not want to watch these action heroes be romantically linked with anyone over the age of 30.
Well, I mean, that just speaks to this kind of misogyny that's been in Hollywood filmmaking since it began, right? There's no getting beyond that, right? There's women over a certain age cannot be sexy or sexual. Women over a certain age cannot be attractive. Women over a certain age who are not, in a relationship will never be in a relationship, et cetera, et cetera. But it's okay for the men, Dolph Lundgren, he's what, in his 60s right now?
Yeah.
To be single and this bachelor and have this bachelor pad, and it's strange. But I mean, when you think also about the Schwarzenegger film, the original one. I mean, Schwarzenegger was born in 1947, and Penelope Ann Miller was born in 1964. So there was certainly a somewhat of a May December thing happening in that as well too. But not to the like incredible extreme that this film. I mean, the kindergarten teacher in this movie looks like she just almost graduated kindergarten herself, to be honest.
Yeah.
And he is, and I think you and I have talked about this before, he is clearly limping around in this movie, not in good shape because he just in real life had just had hip surgery, right? So
Right.
it is interesting to see this extreme, dichotomy between these two people just within their age, and the fact that it really is just the emperor's new clothes, and nobody seems to mention it, nobody seems to care about it. It is just what it is, and that's that.
Well, and again, trying to hit the beats of the original, because that's what this film is doing. There's a scene where he confronts a stressed out father. Okay, now in the original, and this is another classic scene that everybody remembers. In the original, Arnold confronts an abusive father, and it's a really powerful, it's a really great scene. I mean, it's not even shoot. It's a 2-minute scene, but this scene has gone down. I mean, it's readily available on YouTube. I mean, it is a really a powerful moment. Here, the film obviously doesn't want to touch upon the serious subject of child abuse. So they established that the dad has been drinking after getting laid off from his job. And so Dolph speaks to this dad and kind of speaks some wisdom to him. And apparently Dolph has connections and is able to find him a position somewhere. I don't really know where. So the next time we see the dad, he is in a suit, because apparently, according to the script, suit equals job. I guess that's the level we're going here.
Yes. And it's also interesting to me that this jobless man can continue sending his child to this school that costs an exorbitant amount of money. But I'm not coming to Kindergarten Cop 2 looking for any form of like connection to reality by any means. So I'll forgive it that.
What are your thoughts? I wanted to get your take. What are your thoughts on the Twix product placement here? I first of all, I have trouble believing that Dolph, being as fit as he is pretty much relying on a diet of Twix bars all the time. But I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how it goes with product placement in films and whatnot, but did Twix really contribute to the budget of this heavily for Twix to be as prevalent in this movie as it is?
I couldn't even begin to tell you. And it's not like the first film had something that was kind of famous in terms of product placement. So it would be something that the second film needed to kind of really try to cash in on as well. It would be like making a sequel to E.T. and then having some form of like gigantic product placement to replace it, like with Reese's in the first film. But, the first film in Kindergarten Cop, hopefully these two movies and we're done. In the first film didn't have any sort of like famous advertising for products other than really the kind of like the city of Astoria.
Yeah. Well, I wanted, okay, there's a couple other scenes I just wanted to get your thoughts on. Okay, how about the auctioning scene? So, again, this is another moment that is a little weird and doesn't make a whole lot of sense narratively. It is never established, not even in a passing line of dialogue, that they're having this auction where they're auctioning off, apparently, a bunch of, I don't know if it's men and women or if it's just Dolph, because we don't see anybody else who's being auctioned off. But no line of dialogue is brought up to this. It's never established that this is to benefit the school or a fundraiser, maybe even a computer program or something. Nothing. All it is we have a scene where Dolph is being auctioned off to the highest bidder, and it seems like it's all just an excuse, once again, to show that Dolph is irresistible, not just to women, but to men as well, where they're willing to pay an exorbitant amount of money to simply go on a date with him.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know, I don't know enough about Dolph Lundgren personally in order to know whether or not he was like, yeah, I will do this. I'll do this movie, but you have to throw in this scene that's going to stroke my ego somehow. Or, I mean, I don't know enough about that. But, obviously it's another scene to kind of like make fun of, like, who are we going to try to make angry in this scene? Okay, well, let's make fun of homosexuals in this scene. And like, let's make fun of the fact that Dolph is praying that this guy doesn't outbid everyone else. And it's just this other kind of like, I am all about like nasty, mean, like rude comedy. I'm all about it. I think there's a place for it, and I think that we need more of it, but there has to be a purpose to it. There has to be a point behind it. There has to be something to drive that. And this is just another example of this movie where the point is to be mean, just to be mean. I certainly wouldn't go so far as to call the film homophobic by any means, because it doesn't have enough of that kind of streak throughout the whole movie to even care about gay characters, which is fine. It doesn't need to be about gay characters, but it's certainly an odd scene.
Well, something else that really struck out to me as well is, and again, going back to the original, but do you remember in the original film when Crisp landed into town and he was near the school? So if you go, it was about the third act of the film when he and his mother arrive in Astoria, Oregon. Okay. There is, I don't know if you felt this way or not, but there's like a real threat to those proceedings where it's kind of like an oh shit moment. Like, the villain of the film is now on our turf. Okay. And so as a result, we get some, the stakes suddenly get upped. And if you remember, that's the scene where they realize that, I think it's revealed at the carnival, if I remember, in the first one. And that's when Arnold's cover is blown and everything. And it really ups the stakes. Here, there's no threat whatsoever, because if you remember, the gangster Zogu, his goons hassle Dolph right outside the school. So they know exactly where Dolph is at. They hassle him right outside the school before he goes into work. And Dolph beats their ass, no problem, then goes into work. And I don't know if you felt this way, but it's kind of like, look, if there's no threat whatsoever to Dolph, okay, then it's kind of like, why am I even invested here? Because obviously the character, okay, Dolph, he doesn't seem worried, in any kind of way. And as a result, there's never a sense of urgency there on anyone's behalf.
Yeah. I mean, I think we're looking at this a little deeper than I'm sure the filmmakers intended us to. But I mean, you're absolutely right. The film ends with this incredibly lame climax when they're on a
field trip. Hold on real quick. They're on a field trip to bury a time capsule. Have you ever, in your entire years of education, Nathan, have you ever taken the kids on a field trip to bury a time capsule?
I have
Who
not.
does that?
I've actually never sent my children as a teacher on a field trip without me as their teacher as well too. And he just stays at the school and lets them go. And it's all very odd. It's all very strange. I would think if the film is trying to make some form of point about these, modern day education and what we're going through and everything like that, you would think that the film would have at least tried to, throw in something about like, violent physical threats to students in the school and like lockdowns and lockouts and stuff like that. But, these guys come to the school, they try to muscle him, he ends up muscling them, and then they're done. I mean, it's just really, really uninteresting screenwriting.
Well, I think, let's face it. We glossed over this film. We looked at the highs and the lows. I think there were maybe some more valleys than there were peaks in this one. But okay, as someone who adores the original like you do, I'm curious, does this film get a recommend from you? And I'm assuming you're going to say no, but I'm curious, why not? What are your final thoughts on this particular film?
I would absolutely not recommend this movie. If I had to tell people between this and Detention, like you had to choose a film, I would definitely tell them to choose this one. But I would just tell them to rent the original. It is, or to stream the original, or to buy the original. It is the same narrative done infinitely better than this.
Thank you. With regard to my recommend, I would say I agree with you. I mean, no, this film is not good per se, especially when stacked up against its superior predecessor. I mean, it's 26 years after the original. So not only is it irrelevant at this point, but it's also completely unnecessary. I would say for fans of Dolph Lundgren, there is a certain appeal seeing him in this silly family film and surrounded by kids. And I do wonder if Dolph was more like Ivan Drago in those first 15 minutes and we got to see him grow that humanity and become a better teacher in the process, similar to, Arnold transitioning from the Terminator to teacher in the first movie, if maybe that would have added some more texture to the film. As is, yes, it is extremely dopey. None of the characters are particularly funny. It really just makes you want to go back and rewatch the original once again. I think even as a family film, what's interesting is I actually had this on with my kids in the background, and they were bored with it as well. And so what's really interesting about it is it's not entirely appropriate for children. Okay, so but it's also nothing that I think adults are going to seek out either. I honestly think, Nathan, and maybe I'm wrong with this, I don't know, but I wonder if the only people who actually sought something like this out are in fact fans of Dolph Lundgren who just want to see how bizarre the conceit plays out. So I will say, if the idea of Dolph stepping into a kindergarten class and eating Twix bars and teaching them how to cheat at Capture the Flag sounds appealing, then by all means, go ahead and check it out.
And I would say, by all means, skip it and check out the original.
Well, this has been a pleasure. I mean, I know this has been brewing for us for a long time to get back and do this one. But before I let you go, anything that you want to plug, anything that you want to give a mention to? I know that you laboriously log every movie that you've ever seen. Is there anything that you want to give a shout out to? Anything that you've seen of late that you'd like to mention, or what's going on?
So there are, I just recently spent some time at the Denver Film Festival a few weekends ago, and there were two movies there that I saw that were outstanding that are coming out soon, and then there's another movie that I saw that same weekend but was not part of the festival that was in theaters but should be coming to streaming soon. So the two movies from the festival that I saw, I can't even believe that I'm mentioning this on a podcast about Kindergarten Cop 2, but were the new Pedro Almodovar movie called Parallel Mothers, which was absolutely outstanding, and the new Sean Baker film called Red Rocket with Simon Rex in it, which is absolutely wonderful. And then the film that I saw that was not part of the festival, but was in theaters at the time, is a film called Mass, which is about two couples that come together that have been affected by a mass shooting that happened at a local high school. And it has some of the strongest acting in any film that I have ever seen. And it's definitely the movie that I'm going to be rooting for come award season, hoping that it gets at least nominated, if not wins, for a couple of those actors and actresses.
Awesome. I'll have to check those out because I've heard of them actually. Each one of those actually, but I wasn't able to make it out to that festival. But you've now put them on my radar, so I'm gonna give them a gander. Yeah, thanks.
Excellent. All right. Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, and thank you very, very much. To everyone out there who is listening, please feel free to rate and review the show on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever else you go to subscribe. We always appreciate the reviews, and we'll see you all next time on I Must Break, this podcast.